Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Bao Podcast. For episode 27, we invited Regina Zirion. Regina is head of sales at Cutr. She was born and raised in Mexico, where she studied and worked until she moved to Amsterdam in 2018. She worked for Uber from 2016, first in Mexico City, and from 2018 onwards in Amsterdam until she left the company in 2021 to join Cutr. Cutr is a Dutch company that was founded in 2021. And at Cutr, experts from two worlds come together, software engineering and woodworking. As a team, they work on the latest technology to make custom woodworking faster, easier, and cheaper. People can upload their designs on the Cutr website and will receive an offer in a maximum of 12 hours. I am very curious today to hear more about Regina's activities and, of course, about Cutr's activities. So let's directly dive into it. Welcome, Regina. How are you doing today?
Thank you. Thanks for that lovely introduction. I'm doing well. How are you, Ben?
Also very well, yeah. It's better weather than yesterday, so that's quite nice.
That's true.
During autumn in Belgium. Regina, I think maybe to start at the very logical beginning, can you maybe explain a little bit more, Cutr itself and how you ended up at Cutr?
For sure. I can start at the very beginning and tell you a little bit about where Cutr started and why it was founded. And then from there, I can tell you a little bit about my story when I joined. So Cutr initially was the brainchild of three co-founders. Rodney is one of them. He comes from the woodworking industry. He had his joinery workshop for about 10 years, grew to a 20 people team, and so had that experience going and sort of understood the market and understood the pain points and the difficulties of the market. Second was Oscar, who comes from Uber as well. He had sort of the tech and marketplace business model in his experience. And the third is Jasper. And Jasper has a super interesting background in advertising, but also loves to code in his free time and has loved to do this for a really long time. And so the three of them came together about 2.5 years ago, or maybe even 3 years now, and decided that this was an opportunity where it would make sense to build a business. And they founded it in 2021. And we launched our public website, if you will, end of that year, almost beginning of 2022. And I had met Oscar back at Uber, and I was looking to take my next step after, a little bit over 5 years at Uber. And I basically started conversations with him. And in 2021, I hopped over and joined the team. At that point, we were 5 people, 2 software engineers and 3 co-founders. And now we're a team of 30. So it's been loads of learnings. I had never really worked anywhere close to the wood industry before then. But it's been a really interesting journey to take my learnings from the marketplace and tech industry into wood, which is, something really new for me.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, there are some similarities between, I think, Uber and Cutr. Like it's both a two-sided marketplace, if I'm correct.
Yeah, exactly.
But otherwise, like it's like we were discussing a little bit before we started recording. Yeah, the construction industry and maybe specifically the wood cutting industry, it's a completely different ball game, right?
Definitely not related to the transport or the food delivery business at all. But you are right. There is definitely something similar in our marketplace model. We do see ourselves as supply and demand coming together through technology. So we are a software-enabled marketplace that's playing in the wood industry. And we're, as far as we know, one of the first, if not the first, to be able to do that and to try and bring that new market model into the industry.
And why did Oscar and Jasper and what was it?
Rodney.
Why did the guys think that that was a valuable thing to do? I mean, I know Oscar, so he explained it once to me, but I think it's very interesting to explain to the audience as well. Like, why did they got excited about going behind this opportunity in the wood working industry?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the key triggers for when we identify something to be a good business is probably when there's loads of inefficiencies and lots of problems to solve. And the wood industry, particularly the woodworking industry, is likely one that hasn't really had that much of a technological investment in the last few years. For sure, there were, things with machining happening, and CNC and computer controlled machining going on, but when it comes to the business model, really hadn't been looked at for a really long time. And yet the interactions between customers and wood manufacturers or woodworkers and wood producers are still very inefficient. And Rodney, coming from that industry, had a really good firsthand experience from what that meant. And in really broad terms, what happens in the woodworking market is somebody has an intent, a design, and that party is not going to be the same party that produces the design. So there's several layers that exist between the designer or the person that ideates a design and the person that's building it. And normally in those layers, there's loads of miscommunication, loads of errors or missed details, loads of back and forth. People change their minds. People forget to give all the details, and deadlines change, and budgets also change. So having tech try and help make those interactions easier is really where the opportunity was spotted. And so what we're trying to build is software and technology to help bring those two languages together. You normally have a designer on one hand speaking a very design-forward language, whereas the woodworker or the production facility will speak a lot more of a technical wood language. And those normally aren't really easy to translate. So as much as we can, we're building the tools to help that conversation become easier and faster and more intelligent with software.
Right. So if I try to make it very concrete, like I am an architect, I drew something in SketchUp, which looks nice, which my residential client likes. Mm-hmm. And I need to get that nice looking SketchUp design manufactured at the best possible rate, at the best possible quality. But traditionally, I would need to start contacting wood workshops one by one. I have no idea whether they have this capacity, the space to manufacture this, even if they have the capability to manufacture this. And I don't even know what a good price is, because it's not my main job to know what the right price is for custom cabinets. And the long-term ambition of Cutr, or the current, what you guys currently do, is that that the architect can upload the SketchUp file, and within 24 or 12 hours, he gets a quote, a delivery date, and that's it. From one side of the platform.
Exactly. Yeah. So what you just described is what the demand side or customers would experience. Upload a file. We have built software that analyzes that file and allows us to quote much faster than the average time that the industry takes. We're also connected to material databases, so our pricing is updated in real time, and our models analyze the manufacturing requirements for building that assembly and the techniques needed, and we have the costs for building that. And so we can provide that quote really quickly. And on the supply side, which basically means the network of production facilities and production partners that we have on our platform, we can really quickly see and understand the capabilities and the capacity in real time for that project. And so we can match much more efficiently a project to a production facility, which would take, as you mentioned, an architect's probably loads of time and overhead to discover, identify who are the woodworkers or interior builders out there that can produce his or her design, and what the price would be, calling them up, waiting for quotes. We have definitely seen quotes be 2 to 3 weeks, even 5 weeks sometimes when producers are really busy. And so what we try to do is really shorten that time frame and give the customer all the information they need to make a decision. Mm-hmm. And once that's decided, our software can also then provide the producer or the manufacturing facility all the information they need to cut that straight away. And we provide the design files, we provide all the material information that's already been sort of digested into a standard format so that they know what to expect from us. And the delivery details are all included. And we also have agreed on a price. So there's no more guesswork. And at that point, no more back and forth with the customer. So for the production facilities that we work with, for our network, we're also an inbound channel where they don't have to worry about finding the customer and doing a bunch of quotes that won't then convert into a real job. Because by the point they get a job from us, it's secure.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, we were discussing it before we were recording, but for from the manufacturing side, there are a couple of extra benefits as well, right? There's the software, the fact that they get like a ready to quote software file, because usually they get something that they still need to transfer to their manufacturing software, right?
Yeah, we've heard, as we also get loads of napkin sketches as well. And from us, they can expect a ready-to-go file.
Napkin sketches?
Napkin sketches. Sketches on a napkin from serious architects.
Oh, God. Yeah, I shouldn't probably laugh too loud. I can imagine these things still happen, yeah?
Yeah. And from our perspective, there's a couple of benefits, but really within the network that they can get from using Cutr. So first of all, of course, is new jobs, new customers, which allows them to get jobs when they are low on their own sales and maybe have dips in production, or they have extra capacity laying around so they can fill up their machines with jobs from Cutr. They also have access to our tools. So we've developed our tools in the framework of a two-sided marketplace to make that transaction more efficient. But what we're seeing is a lot of the producers that we work with actually really like the tools that we've developed for ourselves and are starting to want to use them for their own facilities, for their own companies, be that our quoting software or our project management tracking or payments and credit facilities as well. And the third one I'd add is also a lot of the times we're seeing is that our producers become our customers when they are low on capacity and they have too much work. So they don't want to lose their customers and they don't want to have to delay a deadline, but they may not have the right capacity at that moment, or maybe they don't have the right machines to produce a certain type of job. And so they come to us as a customer in that case and sort of let the Cutr network also do work for them. So it's a really interesting dynamic that we're seeing in the marketplace where, sometimes they come to Cutr to get a job and sometimes they come to Cutr to give a job and get that produced.
When you explain it like this, it seems like such a logical idea that it's one of those things that when you're a little bit familiar in the industry, as we are with Sam as well, like it solves so many issues that you start to wonder, like, why didn't anyone do this before? Like, why didn't any of the big, kitchen material manufacturers do this? Like, it seems such a obvious thing to do. Yeah.
That's a great question. And I think for sure, hindsight is 2020, and it's, it was such an obvious market need. But the reality is that it's a lot more simply described than built.
Mm-hmm.
So there's loads of complexities when you start to want to port manufacturing techniques and languages between different players in the industry. The software is available for CAD, for CAM, for quoting are so fragmented, and there's so many of them. And the woodworking techniques that each woodworker or interior builder will use are so varied, and there's no real mapping or there's no real book to tell you here's all the possibilities, and you just pick one. So building that intelligence and market knowledge out was really the first step that we had to learn over the first couple of years. And we're still learning, and we're learning from our own customers and our own producers, and we really like to work with different producers that understand the vision of where we want to take Cutr and want to become part of that. And so we have really fruitful relationships with some of our partners where they contribute just as equally to building the software and building the intelligence behind it.
Yeah, I can imagine. It sounds great when you pitch it like this, very straightforward, but behind the scenes there's probably a whole lot of complexity to solve. And it's something that we've noticed as well. I mean, it's something that we've struggled throughout the years as well. You design in a certain software, in our case SketchUp, because it's easy. You can put add-ons on it to make it look nice for commercial purposes, but then when you need to ship it to your manufacturer, he uses his specific software, and that software is linked to his specific manufacturing line, and that software doesn't allow certain degrees of freedom that SketchUp does because there's no gravity in SketchUp. That's something that we needed to learn. Like, you can design any cabinet that you want in SketchUp and it will stand up and it will look great, but when you start putting it into reality, the guy who manages the factory is like, that doesn't work. That no way. So, and if you then multiply that by different, because that's something maybe that I also learned, and I don't know how, you already mentioned it, but like there's so many different manufacturing softwares for cabinets.
So many.
Like, how did that happen? Like, in an architectural sense, like for an architect, you have like 2 or 3 big ones now. What is it? Autodesk, Revit. They all design in like 3 different software packages, but cabinet manufacturers, what happened there? There's like
thousands,
like small little softwares made by Belgian family businesses. Like that's what our manufacturing party works with. That you're like, but there's no
Definitely.
like big multinational who is doing this.
No, it's the market that was forgotten. Just little players were trying to tackle each, reinventing the wheel. And so there's, I think, some bigger software companies attempting to build an overlay that maybe plugs in or connects them. But I don't think anybody has managed to crack it just yet.
Is that something you guys are also aiming for?
That's definitely something we're aiming for.
Okay.
That's the $1 million cracking question.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Something that connects one software to connect them all. Yeah.
One software to rule them all.
Yeah. Okay.
Or at least, it doesn't even need to translate as long as somebody can just use the output of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And is the experience that you had with Uber, which I can imagine, you were there from 2018 till 2021.
21, yeah.
Right. Does the experience that you and Oscar had there, and maybe other people from the team as well, like how much is it being translated into Cutr right now, and how much did you had the idea, if you had the idea of like, okay, we're gonna do the same thing but for the woodshop market, like how did that end up? Like the theory, did it end up with the practical thing? I mean, I don't know if am I making myself clear?
Yeah. Definitely. No, I think there's definitely principles that are applicable when building marketplaces for any industry and any application. So I think we brought a lot of that know-how and a lot of that, of those learnings into Cutr. There's definitely a really big learning curve and ramp up to try and translate those learnings into a different industry at a very different stage. I also think, like, by the point I had joined Uber, and Oscar has a completely different experience here because he was a lot earlier and he saw a lot of more of the sort of basic foundational blocks of Uber get built. The difference from going from 0 to 1 in a new industry is still so massive. There's so many things to build and to figure out and to crack. While you can apply some of the learnings and some of the principles that, we brought with us, there's just so many things to discover, understand, and honestly just make mistakes with. We had really spiky first months when we had, super big wins, but also really big mess ups that we had to get across and learn the tough way. And the reality is also that the industry itself is so fragmented. There's no central body of knowledge that we can tap into. There's, of course, levers that we can pull and different networks that we can, call it, infiltrate to scale and speed up our learning curve. But the learning curve still is something to get through. And I mean, we're not across it, of course, but we're in a much better place of understanding the dynamics and the networks of the industry now.
Yeah. Something that I always learned from a distance through podcasts and stuff like that is like the big challenge of like starting a two-sided marketplace is like demand and supply must grow equally. Is that something that you're noticing now as well?
Definitely. One thing that we did come across, or that we ported across from our time at Uber, is you want to make sure supply is there, and having more supply than demand will fix a lot of the problems that will come out of these marketplace interactions naturally, just by having more supply.
More supply than demand.
Yeah.
I would think that it would be opposite.
There's something to say about how much you can sustain having more supply without enough demand. But you definitely want to think of building the supply side faster, because loads of marketplace challenges, for example, lead times or pricing or quality, can actually be fixed a lot naturally at scale when you have optionality on your supply side. And so if you just, if you're stuck with one production facility and you have multiple customers, you really don't have anywhere to turn to when you have a quality issue or when you have a pricing issue or a lead time issue. But the more supply that you have, you can actually correct those marketplace issues a lot more naturally. And the only sort of thing to keep in mind is that you need to sustain that a little bit artificially as well. So you have to have, what we found is probably you have to have some really highly engaged first production partners so that they understand that they're brought into the vision and that they don't expect you to have your demand side figured out immediately.
Okay, right, yeah. So you set up the first manufacturing parties, but you say, look, you are the first.
Yeah.
And demand will come.
Yeah.
Let us know how you would like that demand to come. In this case, like, what's the best way we can deliver the demand to you? And then go from there.
Yeah. And our first manufacturing partners, and we call them production partners at Cutr, our first production partners really were key to us developing the right tools and the right understanding of the market. Because even if Rodney indeed came from the industry, he has the viewpoint of one single production facility. And what we've learned is that facilities with, 500 meters distance between each other will do things completely differently. And there is not one book that tells you all the different possibilities. And this knowledge isn't really shared anywhere. So that's also one thing that we want to make sure that we build into our software is the intelligence of, best practices and optimization of woodworking.
Mm-hmm. Was there also like an environmental idea behind starting Cutr, like working with wood? Is it something that or scaling the amount of manufacturing that happens in wood, is it something where you see environmental benefits in?
100%. That is, or has been, and is one of our sort of main North Stars, is to eventually increase the size of the pie of the wood market, because where we want to get to is a place where more often than not, people choose wood over other less sustainable materials. And the way to get there is to make wood cheaper, faster, and more efficient for everybody involved. And I think, at least personally, success for Cutr would be the day where actually wood is preferred over other materials. And that has been one of the sort of goalposts. And of course, we believe we can create a lot of impact in that area at scale. It's, of course, really hard to say, you know, with 2 years of operations, this is how much impact we've already had. But as we scale and become a more active player in the marketplace and start to understand what those transactions in woodworking are, then we can make those more efficient and build the right products to make those more efficient. And so that sort of grows the industry. But we do believe, I mean, wood is the only material you can plant and regrow. It's carbon trapping and regrowable. So we definitely think wood is the future, and we want to make sure that we're giving it enough love and attention as an industry to make that a reality. Of course, governments and different players have their heads in the right place, because loads of regulations are moving in that direction, which is awesome to see. And one thing we want to do is be able to facilitate that transition with technology, with data, and helping all players in the industry be more efficient to reach those really ambitious goals.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very positive goal, very great ambition. And also when you extrapolate it far enough, I think it ends up in, as you say, making these manufacturing parties more efficient, and efficiency translates to lower prices, right? Not necessarily lower margins, but lower prices, which indeed makes it more accessible to the market, because that's something that I usually hear when it's not necessarily when we sell our solution, but when it's about building in wood, for example, that they always say, yeah, it's great, but it's more expensive. Like, that's one of the main arguments I hear developers saying quite often. And yeah, you're not yet building entire buildings, or are you? Right?
Not yet.
Okay, let's not run ahead. But I can imagine that if you extrapolate this vision, that's where it's going to go to.
Definitely, yeah. So Oscar puts it really neatly.
CEO.
Oscar, our CEO and co-founder. He puts it very well when he explains the way that we're learning to walk before we run, by building product and software and playing in the last sort of bits of the supply chain with lower risk projects. So if we're building software and we're building this marketplace in a transaction that's worth, maybe some thousands of euro or maybe 100,000 euro, that's still, if we make any type of mistake, because we want to iterate and we want to move very quickly, that's still less risky than making a mistake of building the wrong thing for a building. So we definitely want to crack first the smaller types of projects in the wood industry and call that interiors or standalone furniture. The most complex things we are doing now are tiny homes. So we are getting into structural in a very small scale, but we definitely cannot just start with construction. So we're sort of learning the basics by trying to gather as much data as we can from playing in the interior building industry first before we sort of expand. But it's definitely in the plans, and it's definitely where we want to get to, because that's really where the impact, speaking about sustainability, where we could reach it.
Mm-hmm. Maybe if we skip from the grand vision a little bit back to the beginning, I also think it's quite impressive that you guys have only existed for 2 years now, 2021, right? In the middle of COVID.
Yeah, definitely. We launched in, I think it was like late December, early January 2022. So now that's
2022.
January. So yeah, December 2021, January 2022 were the first actual ramp up of our, call it publicly facing marketplace.
So it's actually only 18 months that you are up and running.
Yeah, I mean, we're at November, so in 2 months it'll be 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And in that time frame, I mean, we have a fantastic team and we have really smart people tackling this problem. So I've been super happy to see what progress we've made in 2 years. And of course, very excited about the future. But already, knowing where we started with one producer, we have 150 producers now on our network and growing really quickly. So that's really exciting. And geographically, we started in the Netherlands, and that's, of course, where our main market is. But we have clients that are coming from Germany, from Belgium, and UK even. And because geographically, if the transport makes sense, we're not really bounded by sort of geographic location too much. So we have space to explore a little bit. So we've grown quite quickly in those almost 2 years.
150 manufacturing parties in less than 2 years.
Yeah.
That's like seven, eight a month. That's more than one a week.
Yeah. We have a fantastic
Damn.
production
really
partner
quickly.
operations.
And can you maybe say a little bit more about how do you grow a team and an organization that quickly? Like you're with 30 people now.
That's a great question. I think we keep the bar really high for talent. We have to hire people that are willing to take the risk, of course, because we're a young company, still loads to prove and loads to build. But we've hired quite quickly, I guess, if you put it that way. We've gone from 5 to 30 in 20 months. So yeah, there's definitely just the hiring aspect, being very laser focused on what types of profiles we need and really why are we hiring. Of course, in a resource constrained environment, as you will know, Ben, you need to be very smart about when and who you hire and what for. So we've invested heavily in our software team for sure. And then this year we've also invested in our operations and sales teams. So now we have a really good mix of both people building tech and people being able to operate and sell that. And I think we just have a really high bar for talent as well.
I can imagine, but then there's a lot of work that goes into that. It's like the HR manager was one of the first hires you did then.
We're all HR managers.
You have not a single person responsible for HR.
No, everybody does recruiting. Everybody does
really
candidate sourcing. We're all wearing the HR hat to a certain extent. We actually got hats made for a team event, and there was one with the HR hat that we were passing around because we don't have one.
Whoa, that's interesting.
Yeah, everybody from the CEO to the most recent hire will be in the interviews, keeping the bar high for the next candidate.
Fascinating. So when you have a new position open and the applications come in, like, all right, this week it's your turn, Regina. You do the first selection, or like how does that work?
I think it's worked differently for different growth spurs and different parts of the team. But normally, the team that needs to hire, we do have sort of heads of each department now, which is also recent. But we do have those, and they would be the more or less responsible for for the hiring process and for organizing that. But we all participate in each other's processes. We think, human resources or our employees are the strongest thing we can bring, the most value add that we can bring to the company. So hiring is the number one priority when we are hiring. Right now, we're not hiring anymore for now. But when we were earlier this year, and for the last 2 years, we've been hiring, and everybody puts on the HR hat. We have, of course, in some cases, we have hired some external support for some sourcing, But when it comes to the internal process, we're all helping each other out. We have quite a long hiring process, if I may say so, for ourselves. But we really want to make sure that we have the right people on board. So
What's long? Strict. How many steps? How many interviews? I'm getting a little bit into because this is interesting. We are hiring someone now, so
we
I'm
normally
asking questions for myself now. Sorry, audience, if this isn't interesting, but it's a little bit selfish.
So I'll share an example of some recent hires, but Oscar gets involved, Rodney gets involved. We have Oscar basically shooting out candidates messages on LinkedIn to try and get some attention, and then we would have sort of a first one-on-one interview, either with the hiring manager or with somebody else from the team, sort of a first filter. Then we have a second one-on-one interview with somebody that would be the peer of that person, and that's a little bit more technical. So the first one's a little bit more just general, cultural, and sort of motivation type of gauge, and then second is a little bit more technical. And then we have normally we do like some type of exercise or case study, and we invite the candidate to the office if possible. Otherwise we do a video call, and there's a panel of a few people, maybe 2 or 3 people that are present. And case study normally has a couple of sections. One's a little bit more data focused depending on the department. Another one's more practical, maybe one's strategic. It really depends on what type of role we're hiring. For engineers, of course, it'll be an engineering exercise. And if needed, there'll be just the last sort of fit interview where there's just a coffee in a more relaxed environment. Mm-hmm. So 4
interviews.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that's a lot. We do usually 3. We don't do the coffee at the end.
So it's 4, and then I guess in one of the stages you meet 3 more people.
Right.
So
interesting. Yeah. Okay, and yeah, maybe it's kind of obvious, but like this type of business is really grown via venture-backed funding, right?
Yes.
How is that? How did that go in the last couple of years, and how are you looking at the current market, and what are the benefits and like the downsides of it?
Yeah. So originally, and this was before I joined Cutr, there was some sort of angel investors and friends and family rounds going. Then we we raised our seed round last year. I believe it was in April. And this was a process that actually started probably since January. So we had actually just really launched. But luckily we were able to show some revenue even, the moment we started, we were already revenue generating. So those conversations were a little bit easier. And of course, dipping into like the network of the co-founders and the connections that we had, we were able to raise VC money from 3 different parties.
So that's VC money for a seed round?
Yeah.
And on average, these type of seed rounds in the US are like anywhere between 2 to 5 million?
Yep.
And that's the same here when you do it in Europe?
Well, we raised our main investor for their seed round was from the US.
Okay.
Secondaries were from UK and Germany.
Okay.
So we have a really good mix of investors, which essentially at this stage are advisors. And we tap into them for advice and networking and knowledge and loads of really good introductions when you're trying to build a team and a company at this stage. And so that was luckily before the tech market and the cash availability in the tech market went to where it went last year. And luckily as well, now we're seeing that start to become a little bit more liquid, I think it's going to be much better now than wanting to have raised maybe 6 months ago. Mm-hmm. But we're looking to raise our Series A round end of this year or beginning of next. And that's where we're at. We're,
So the seed in early 2021?
2022.
2022, right. Yeah. Right. You launched the software and then
Yeah.
And then that gives you 2 years, roughly 2 years of runway.
Yeah, exactly. Roughly. Yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah, really exciting.
Because with this type of business, like there's never enough revenue in those early years to like, have 30 people on payroll. Or how to,
no, definitely not bottom line profitable just yet. Not self-sustaining, but we on our way. Ideally, we would have an option to do that pretty soon if we needed, but we of course want to invest in growth, and so we are looking to raise a Series A.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fascinating. It's more the American model. I think in the Netherlands you see it more as well, but it's you notice that you guys come from a company like Uber, because doing something like how you guys are doing it in Belgium, doing it in Flanders, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think it's so much more difficult if you don't have access to those American and maybe even UK capital markets.
I think it's also, given our business model and the software company behind it, it allows us to do that. And we also went through Y Combinator last year, so that of course that sort of paves a really nice path to have these conversations for sure. But it is more of the traditionally American. Maybe explain that to the audience, because I'm not sure if everyone knows how big of a deal that is. Y Combinator. That's like Harvard for startups, right? It's like Harvard for startups, sure. And I think that this was the co-founders applying in 2021. So even before I joined, but I think they got rejected once before they got accepted. I'll have to confirm that before we put this into the podcast, but I'm pretty sure. Doesn't really matter, right? They got rejected the first time, and then the second time they got in. And this was the winter batch of 2022. So that's January through March. And only 2 months. 3, I think. 3 months. Yeah. January, February, March. Wow. I'm pretty sure it was only 3 months. Really, really intensive for the co-founders. It's a co-founder program. So basically, it's I think Y Combinator has a different way of explaining it, but I still think the simplest way of putting it is a boot camp for startups. 3-month boot camp. Yeah. With less physical focus, but more mentally focused. Exactly. It used to be physical, like in person before, but after COVID, they've now done it digitally. And the end goal, of course, is to raise investment at the end of it. And so Y Combinator now has an option where they also are part of that investment. They do, as soon as a company gets accepted, they get some type of fundraise or some type of investment from Y Combinator themselves, and then there's an option to extend that after the program. And so it's a 3-month program where the company gets to meet, or the co-founders get to meet a bunch of different companies and in the same stage, and I think they get assigned an advisor or some type of coach from Y Combinator to guide them and to advise them through that. And then it's a 3-month period of just focusing on product market fit, getting the value proposition as clear as possible. Exactly. Maybe first traction. Exactly. Yeah. It's a little bit of everything to just make sure that you arrive to that pitch day with all of the questions answered beforehand. And there's also a small financial... There's a small financial investment from Y Combinator. I think it's somewhere 100 or 200,000 US dollars. And but I think more than the financial incentive, it's the sort of network and the weight of the name that carries for a future round, for sure. Yeah, I can imagine. It sort of opens the door and guarantees an audience. Cool. Very cool. That was a little bit a sidetrack into the technicality of doing a high venture startup. But now if we take it maybe a little bit back to the value proposition of Cutr itself, I was also wondering, while you were explaining it, like how far does the service go? Like if I put myself in the position of, again, let's say that architect, and does it come with like full service in the sense of, can you guys also offer a quote for installation and transportation? Yep. So we started with mostly just manufacturing, but also saw the need very quickly to have a full service package. And so we now work on our supply side with our production partners that do offer installation, transportation, logistics. We've tried a bit of drop shipping as well. There's some clients that we do that for, basically holding stock and shipping that out to their end customers when they need it.
You hold stock?
Yes, our partners.
The partners.
But on behalf of Cutr.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think putting it simply, we can do, simple production of shapes and we can ship it on pallets, or we can do production, installation or assembly and installation of full fit outs. I call that interiors, sometimes exterior fit outs as well. And product making. So be that furniture or just products that have loads of wood in them, and you can call it retail products as well.
So in the best possible case, I have my design, I upload it on the platform, I get a quote, I accept the quote, and 2 weeks later it's delivered at the site and installed, and the only organization I have contact with is Cutr.
Yes. If that's what the customer wants and is possible, then that's how we work. But yeah, you put it correctly. So the customer in this case could be an architect, an interior designer, a product designer, or a company that needs wooden products, comes to the platform. They can upload a design in 2D, 3D. We also take napkin sketches, and we've built a software that can analyze.
A napkin.
We don't analyze the napkin just yet, but we're working on it. We're experimenting with some AI translations of drawings now. But ideally, yes, once we have that design in a readable format, our software can analyze the sort of components of it, and the customer themselves can assign a material from a material catalog already to the parts, to the elements. Or, there's also a friendly sales team waiting to help out if needed. But the more information that we gather from the customer up front, the faster that we can turn around a quote. We have just launched our instant quote estimates as well. So for simpler files, or I guess one file types of orders with built-in 3D, we can already give a pretty accurate quote estimate up front so that customers get an idea of what they're going to need to pay. If that sounds good, we can then prepare a binding quote for them after that. And they just indicate what type of services they want along with it, be that pre-assembly or installation, or simply just delivery and flat pack, so we can adjust and adapt to the customer's needs. Of course, if it's going to be sort of a longer run project with drop shipping services, we're definitely more than keen to discuss that and come up with a solution that works for everybody. And once we prepare a quote and it's ready to go, then we'll hand that off to the best producer in our network for that particular lead time, material, specialty, technique, etc. And so we have that map built into the software, so we can really quickly just match those orders to the right producers. Of course, we work with customers that have different needs and different requirements, and we definitely can adjust to each customer and personalize a little bit what services we offer to make sure that they're comfortable putting it up. But yeah, what other sort of side models we can bring is we can also just do RFQs on behalf of the customer. So sometimes our customers come
RFQs?
with requests for quotation. So customers maybe need to present 3 different options, and we can help them with that already. So we can sort of flip the model around a little bit and present first 3 pricings, and then with the customer choose which is the best match. And that's also sometimes a requirement in bigger companies, for example, purchasing departments, and they need to see 3 different quotations from 3 different producers, and we can sort that out from a single place.
And does the customer have any direct contact with the manufacturer?
It depends.
Okay.
It depends. It really depends on the complexity of the project and how how long-standing the relationships will be. We at some points do have to have a 3-way conversation. We all come to the table. We discuss details, and we set up a partnership in that way. But for the most part, if it's a straightforward enough project and it's going to be a one-time assembly, that's also not really necessary, because we have the team that does that on behalf of the customer with a production partner. So we take the criteria, the most important design elements, the quality bar, and basically the customer outsources that management to us. And so we represent the customer with our production partner as well. In that way, we can do the quality assurance. We make sure that the tracking and that the project management is done. So we have a team of people in-house to do that. That's the operations team. Mm-hmm. And so we do that on behalf of the customers once the customers are happy and confident that, we can go forward.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think looking at the time, we are approaching the end of this first session of the podcast. But as you probably know, at the end, we always have a little bit the tendency to ask a couple more personal and somewhat random questions.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a fun way to close off this first edition. A fun one that we usually ask is if you could have drinks with anybody, dead or alive. Annoying flying little thing. If you could have drinks with anybody, dead or alive, anyone that comes to mind?
That was a hard one. I think I'd want to have drinks with Oprah Winfrey.
Okay.
I just find her so fascinating, not just, her success story in general, but her vision, her ability to see, she was already famous and probably very rich, but she was like, no, let's take it one step further and just make, the generations after me also very well off. And as a businesswoman, I think she's just admirable. So I'd love to have a little chat with her.
I only know Oprah, but I think it's more, first of all, a woman thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And secondly, it's more an American thing. I never think she became that big in Europe.
That's probably true. I mean, being from Mexico, we're quite exposed to sort of the U.S. pop culture. And so that's where I know
her from, she had that talk show and then she had a book club. And she did a couple of great acting, a couple of great movies, like The Color Purple. Isn't that with Oprah? No. Is it? I don't know.
I'd have to check.
Yeah.
What I admire her is she had her talk show, but then she took it one step further and now has a network. So it's not just, being part of...
There's an Oprah network.
There's an Oprah network. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
And so it's just one step further than,
And does she still come on the network now?
I'm not sure. We don't get that network in the Netherlands.
It's just a whole day of talk shows and interview and Oprah types of programs.
Yeah, and as a producer, I think she just, she saw the opportunity and just decided to take it into her own hands. She didn't just want to be part of a system, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very cool.
And I think she's also a shareholder of Weight Watchers and some other ventures. So, yeah, great businesswoman.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Weight Watchers is Belgian.
What?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I need to double check this, or we can put it in the show notes whether it's true or not. But I think the main shareholder of Weight Watchers is Belgian. But up till recently, I think he sold it.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We will double check. Okay. If you would have to do a job that has nothing to do with what you're doing right now, what would you be doing?
That's an easy one.
Okay.
I'd be a sommelier.
Oh, wines? Yeah?
Yes, wines.
Okay. Why wines?
It's something that just has been in my family for forever. My dad would always just be super interested in wines and would just educate us on wine all the time. Any family vacation would have to have a visit to a winery, which is an interesting one. But more recently, I think it's been one of those topics where my dad and I have had a lot of things in common and have found a really interesting way of connecting. And I'm actually doing a course to become a sommelier. So hopefully in the future, that won't be what would you be question, and would just, how's it going question.
Very cool. Any specific bottles that you can recommend to the audience?
Ooh, that's a difficult one. One bottle, if for European listeners would be easier to find, it's a Spanish wine called Cutr, Cair. They have, I think, like 3 labels at least available in the Netherlands that I can find, but I visited the winery with my dad, actually. I think it was last year, and super nice winery, really nice wine, and their sort of entry-level wines, really accessible price and really nice.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Did you ever see, I once saw a documentary called Som.
Oh, yes.
I was blown away. I was
Right?
like, how the hell, how? Like the guy like smelled like a wine, and he could say from which field in the winery
And the year?
and the year.
It's insane.
Like, yeah, the sun was more on this side of the mountain, so it's probably from like acre 1B where this is bottle is. And I was like,
These guys are crazy.
what
It's
is this a
insane.
thing? Is it something humans can do? I was like blown away. Yeah.
It definitely is. It's very inspiring. I don't think I'd ever get to that level. My nose is not that refined, but you basically, I don't know, this is a really long-winded answer, but you have 5 levels of sommelier, and you actually have 2 schools. You have the American school and the UK school. Maybe there's more. But there's 5 levels, and there's only a handful of people that had made it to the 5th, including the guy in these guys in the documentary made it to the 5th level. So I'm currently going to level 3.
You already are going to level 3.
I need to take my exam, but
So you already are a sommelier.
I'm a level 2, which is not difficult to be. I cannot give myself props for that. I think it takes a weekend. Anybody can really do it.
Okay, so it goes exponential.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely very hard to get 4 and 5.
Okay.
Impossible to get 5.
Is 4 an ambition?
4, I think I'll be happy with 3 and maybe dedicating to teach 2. That's probably my ambition for now. But we'll see. Let's first.
How much study is 3?
3 is like it's a 3-month course for a few
Full
hours.
time? No.
A few hours a week. Like 3 theory hours and another couple hours of wine tasting. There's practical.
That's the fun part.
That's
right?
the fun part.
Yeah.
That's the fun part. I think for level 2, you have to try about 40 wines, and for level 3, you have to try closer to like 80 or more. But honestly, there's a lot of like calibration you have to do with your palate to be able to do the exam, which includes a tasting for level 3.
Okay, so it's on location as well.
Yeah, you have to go to like a certified wine school to take it. Yeah.
Such a specific world, the wine world.
It's a really specific world, but it's a hobby that I'm quite passionate about. And
seems that way. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
Sometimes they also have like these dramas, like that they sell certain bottles, then which aren't those type of bottles, and then
there's another documentary.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I never saw that one, but I heard about it.
Yeah. There's like fake wines being sold.
Yeah. And then I sometimes think like, okay, but how much of this entire like expensive wine thing is like ego and less skill, and because if something like that can happen, which we didn't explain it maybe well for the audience, but like
counterfeit
but like
wine.
a huge amount.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, there's like huge counterfeit wine operations and mafias, I'm sure. But honestly, I just love wine, like understanding wine in a way where you can speak about what you like. And one of the things I think my dad told me and taught me, which is why we connect about, is, just open that bottle because it's for enjoying.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's nice to be able to speak about what you like and be able to sort of guide people on what they like by understanding the world of wine and winemaking. So.
Very cool. And then maybe as a final one, as we are really approaching the end now, any book that you have ever, can be recently, can be an older one, that you've ever read that you would highly recommend to the audience?
Yeah, I just, I finished a book called Everyday Dharma. I think it's Sunil Gupta. And I've never heard of the word Dharma before this book. But the gist of it is loads of people think that, you have to like find your life purpose and you're unhappy in your job and you need to quit and go do something completely different. And one example that it gives is there's this woman working in a tech company as a product manager, super successful. On the outside, you would think she'd be, very happy, very content with her success, but she had always had this like little worm inside saying, you want to be a teacher. And normally people are like, I'm just going to quit everything and be a teacher. But Dharma speaks about the purpose in a way where you can find it every single day. And you don't necessarily need to change your entire career to understand what you like to do and what gives you a sense of purpose. And so this woman ended up understanding that what she liked to do was to help others grow and help others learn. And by actually just changing her role within that same company to a different program where she developed younger employees and candidates, she was super happy because she was doing what gave her purpose. So it doesn't necessarily need to be, just uplifting your life and changing your path completely, but you can find really moments of the day that you really enjoy and start to find your purpose through that and maybe do more of that.
Right. Doesn't need to be eat, pray, love.
No, you don't need you don't need to quit everything and leave forever.
And go to Italy and Bali and
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So just finding those moments of the day. And
Right.
I found that very helpful as a framework to think about, what do you really enjoy doing?
I think that's a beautiful way or a beautiful place to end. Maybe, Regina, if you have any last call to actions to the audience, if there are any, people who have a big wood manufacturing facility in their network, or people who buy lots of cabinets, what's the best way they can get into contact with Cutr?
Yeah, anybody who needs anything made out of wood or who can make things out of wood, let's talk. You can send me an email. Ben, we can put that in the notes, or you can visit our website, Cutr.com, Cutr.com.
It used to be Cutr.ai, no?
Used to be, but apparently this industry has a thing for AI, which we tested. It works best with .com. Actually, you can still use both, but it'll redirect you.
All right, perfect.
And we have chat, phone, email, or just upload a design and you can get a quote.
I think that's it's very clear. If people want to get directly into contact with you, we will put your email in the show notes. And for anyone interested to learn more about Cutr, indeed, just go to Cutr.com. All right, Regina, thank you very much to be here today. I found it a very interesting first conversation. I think what you are doing with Cutr is very necessary. I can speak from experience. We have been trying to solve it a little bit by necessity to get our product made, but I think there are a lot of other parties and organizations who struggle with the challenges that you guys are trying to solve. And if you zoom out from the vision perspective, I think indeed the more things we can produce in wood instead of concrete and metal is a little step closer to a more sustainable future. So I think it's good work that you guys are doing, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. This was fun.
All right, thank you very much. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the Bao Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe to our channel. If you're interested in Bao Living in our Smart Adaptable Module or SAM, go check out our website baoliving.com.